Hi, in this little bite I'm going to talk to you about cracking the code of anxiety and depression. Now, what do I mean by code? Well, if you think of Morse code, letters of the alphabet are changed into dots and dashes, sent along an electrical cable and then turned back into letters of the alphabet. That's an obvious code, right? One thing is transferred or changed into another. Now, our brains use code all the time. All neural signals are coded in basically on-off situations. It's you either get a signal or you don't. It's binary. Computers use code, and the very deepest level of computer code is called machine code. It's ones and zeros. So code is everywhere, and the whole thing about code is that we often don't see it. Now, there are a few things I need to sort of define and just tell you about so that you can understand about cracking the code. If you have a good imagination, you will be familiar with the idea of imagining something, an image in your mind. Okay, so let's say I say, what color is your front door? What color is the car you drive? Where did you go on holiday last time? You'll go, it's brown, it's grey, Spain. Okay, you imagine it in your mind, and then you inspect that image to figure out where you went or what the color of your door is. That's kind of how it works. Now let me ask you this question: how do you know what your computer's doing? What is more or less the only way you can know what your computer's doing? Well, more or less the only way you can know what your computer's doing is by looking at the screen, right? When you look at the screen, you see what your computer has been up to, and until you look at the screen, you can't see what your computer's been up to. Now, your computer has done a whole lot of things to paint the screen for you, to make that image on the screen. It's used code. At the very deepest level, the computer is running on machine code. That is transferred up to the next level, which would be something like C++, and that's transferred up to the next level, which will be, HTML, JavaScript, and that paints the picture on your screen. That creates the picture that you see. Now, it's very similar with your brain, right? You might think this is the lake near my office. Look. So it's quite a nice little spot, isn't it? Now, when I look at this, I see the buildings and I see the lake, etc. But I don't actually see that. What I see is reflected light. The light comes into my eye, it hits the retina. The retina, the cells in the retina, the rods and cones are activated. The light is kind of passed into different colors. It's sent through various relays to my occipital cortex at the back of my head, and the occipital cortex creates this picture that I see. That picture that I see is then transferred to that part of my brain where we might call consciousness, but that part of the brain where I observe images. Okay, so my brain has encoded, it's used code throughout this whole process, and I just have the impression then of seeing what I'm seeing. Now, I'm not aware of the code in action. When you're using your computer, you're not aware of the code in action. But your computer runs on code. Your computer only does what the code tells it to do. It does not do its own thing. And even if it was thinking for itself, it's only thinking for itself because the code has told it to do that. A computer only does what the code tells it to do. Your brain only does what the code tells it to do. Your brain only follows instructions. It doesn't do its own thing. If you're having experiences of anxiety or depression, your brain is giving you that because that's what the code is telling you to do. Sorry, that's what the code in your brain is telling it to give you. It's telling you to give you the experience of anxiety. The code is telling your brain to give you the experience of depression. So, if you don't want to have anxiety or depression, you have to learn to crack the code of anxiety and depression, which means you have to understand what code is running. You have to understand how to change the code, and you've got to kind of own this process and put some effort into it, right? Because your brain is quite highly practiced at giving you these experiences, certainly if you've been struggling with them for a while. So here's the basic point, right? You can learn to crack the code of anxiety and depression, and as a general principle, I would say you can do it with an effort of about 10 minutes a day or less. So for a concerted effort of say 10 minutes a day or less, you can learn to crack the code. Now that's not a bad idea, is it? Learning to crack the code and rewriting the programs so that you have a much better experience, and you just get rid of anxiety, depression, and panic from your life. So you can crack the code.